The year was 1981, a world in flux. Reagan had just taken office, the Cold War was reigniting, and leisure cruises were fast becoming the epitome of middle-class luxury. Daniel and Lorraine Whitaker, both 32, embarked on the MS Ocean Gala on March 5th for what was intended to be a 7-day Caribbean escape. Married in 1973, residents of Fort Lauderdale, they were described by friends as quiet, reserved, and bookish. No children, no enemies, no debts. It was their first vacation. In over 3 years, the ship departed Miami, charting a course for the classic stops: Nassau, San Juan, St. Thomas, and back. The couple was last seen on night 4, during the captain's gala dinner. They danced, shared a glass of wine, and then they vanished. At 6:45 a.m. the next morning, a steward named Luis Ramos entered cabin 423 to deliver breakfast. The bed was untouched, the lights off, the balcony door ajar. The sea wind had billowed the curtains across the room like pale specters. Their clothes remained in the closet, passports in the drawer, Lorraine's handbag on the chair, Daniel's wallet, devoid of cash, rested atop the dresser. The ship's crew was alerted within 30 minutes, and an immediate onboard search commenced. Cabins, decks, engine rooms, kitchens, storage, nothing. The MS Ocean Gala was held at sea for an additional 6 hours, while coastal authorities in the U.S. Virgin Islands were contacted. No one witnessed the couple disembark. No one recalled seeing them after dinner. The cruise's CCTV system, rudimentary by today's standards, offered few usable angles. One hallway camera recorded Daniel and Lorraine walking hand-in-hand at 11:08 p.m., heading toward the sun. That was the last known image of them alive. The cruise company, Atlantic Pearl Lines, initially cooperated with local authorities, but within days, lawyers intervened. Their stance was simple. "We believe this was a tragic accident," the Sea claimed. "Then there is no indication of foul play." Insurance claims were processed. The ship continued its voyages, and the incident slowly receded from the news cycle. Lorraine's sister, Emily Dawson, disagreed. She confided in a local reporter. "Lorraine didn't just fall. She was afraid before they left. She told me something was wrong." When pressed for details, Emily hesitated. She didn't elaborate, only stating that Daniel had gotten into something, and that the cruise was not just a vacation. That quote never made it into print. The reporter who wrote it, Cal Fisher, died in a car crash 2 months later. In late 1991, 6 months after the disappearance, the MS Ocean Gala quietly updated its internal cargo records. Few were aware of this. Passenger ships often carried small amounts of secured cargo, typically luxury goods, diplomatic pouches, or sensitive documents under private contract. One such container on the March voyage was listed only as private transfer, diplomatic, seal code 739A. No origin, no consignee, just a sealed metal container the size of a single coffin. It had been loaded in Nassau and was meant to be offloaded in St. Thomas, but it never arrived. That container was logged as missing in transit and written off in the insurance records, buried under bureaucratic language and international silence. A former crew member, interviewed anonymously in 1993, stated, "We were told to pretend it was never on board, that if anyone asked, it was a clerical mistake. But 2 security officers stood by it the entire first day." And that night, the same night, Daniel and Lorraine vanished. The container disappeared too, in 1996. 15 years after the cruise, a researcher named Helen Moore was compiling a book on unsolved maritime cases. She stumbled upon an internal shipping ledger from Atlantic Pearl Lines, a document misfiled in a Florida shipping registry. It listed several container IDs that had traveled aboard the Ocean Gala in 1981, among them 739A, marked in red as removed mid-route due to incident. This contradicted every official statement. Helen delved deeper, and in one obscure appendix, she found something strange. A customs official in San Juan had logged the arrival and immediate re-export of a sealed diplomatic container on March 9, 1981, the same day the Ocean Gala docked in St. Thomas, where the container was not supposed to be. The signatory on the form? Daniel Whitaker, except he was already missing and legally presumed dead. In October of 2000, during a routine naval mapping exercise off the coast of the U.S. Virgin Islands, a U.S. Navy sonar operator picked up a metallic echo resting 260 meters below the surface. Initial analysis suggested it was a container or vessel, sealed, unmarked, partially embedded in the ocean floor. After recovering it with an unmanned submersible, divers confirmed it matched the dimensions of a diplomatic-grade container. Its serial number had been scratched off, and it bore faint traces of biological material along the outer rivets. Inside, they found degraded documents, waterlogged electronics, and fragments of 2 wedding rings, corroded but still legible. One was engraved Daniel and Lorraine, October 14, 1973. The second, "Come back to me." The container was transported under high security to a naval intelligence facility in Key West, Florida. Officially, it was classified as unidentified submerged object, non-hostile, but those present at the opening described the contents as organized, intentional, and incomplete by design. Among the items recovered, a disassembled radio transmitter similar to military-grade encryption devices used during the early 1980s. Half-burned documents, including one bearing the seal of the U.S. State Department, dated February 1981, destination Nassau, a waterproof envelope inside of which were 2 handwritten letters, both unsigned, both in different handwriting, and sealed in a small padded tube, a microfilm reel labeled 739 AAET protocol. No one explained what AET meant. Within 48 hours, the entire contents were removed from Key West and flown by military courier to Langley, Virginia. The only thing left behind was a photo one that had slipped behind the lining of the container. Lorraine Whitaker, standing on the deck of the Ocean Gala, smiling. Date scribbled on the back, March 7, 1981, and beneath it, in fading blue ink, "He thinks they're watching us. I believe him." In 2004, Lorraine's sister, Emily Dawson, passed away from lung cancer. While clearing out her home in Tampa, her niece discovered a locked metal briefcase buried under quilts in the attic. Inside was a journal, dates, names, maps, and copies of letters Lorraine had sent in the weeks leading up to the cruise letters that were never mailed. One, dated February 18, 1981, read, "Danny's gotten himself involved with someone. He says it's harmless, but there are meetings. They talk in codes. He carries a small black notebook now and won't let me see it. He says it's bigger than us and that this trip is not what I think it is." Another, more frantic, he said if anything happens, I should run. That some people on the ship are not passengers. That a handoff is going to happen in Nassau. But who brings classified documents onto a honeymoon cruise? Emily had kept these letters hidden for 23 years. She never showed them to police, never spoke to journalists. She simply wrote at the bottom of the journal, "If you're reading this, then..." Someone finally cared enough to look again. In 2006, a Freedom of Information Act request filed by a group of Cold War researchers uncovered a reference to something long thought to be myth, Operation Blue Harvest, a multinational program launched in 1980 involving limited cooperation between U.S. intelligence, NATO operatives, and private civilian contractors. Its goal: discrete document and tech transfers across non-military routes to avoid interception by Soviet satellites and surveillance. One of those methods? Private cruises. The operation used low-profile civilians as unwitting couriers who would carry sealed diplomatic material across ports under the guise of vacation travel. They were chosen based on background, appearance, and discretion. The name Daniel Whitaker appeared twice in a redacted memo. In one instance, next to the phrase "asset accepted terms," civilian transport scheduled March 1981. In the second, more chilling, package en route, asset no longer under full control, extraction not recommended. There was no mention of Lorraine. Lorraine Whitaker was not supposed to be on the cruise. According to the cruise line's reservation records, the initial booking was for one person, Daniel. Lorraine's name was added 8 days before departure. No explanation, no adjustments, no approval from handlers. A note in a separate ledger read, "Wife inserted herself. Contingency plans compromised. Monitor closely." This small decision, her refusal to be left behind, changed everything. A former intelligence officer who spoke anonymously for a now-declassified oral history project said, "Civilians were tools, and sometimes tools break." He probably told her, or she figured it out, and that meant the whole operation was exposed. Another agent, retired CIA, offered a different theory. He tried to get out. That's why they both disappeared. There are no leaks from the ocean floor. In 2011, a technician restoring damaged magnetic tapes from a naval listening post in the Caribbean discovered an anomaly, a transmission dated March 9, 1981. At 3:42 a.m., just hours after the Ocean Gala had left its second port, the signal was faint, distorted. It was never processed at the time. The recovered recording lasted 17 seconds. Only one voice, female, panicked, desperate. "They know we have to. It's not just us." Daniel. Interference? They're coming. Then silence. The technician flagged the audio. The file was seized and destroyed, but not before a backup was made and uploaded quietly to a dark archive known only to a handful of maritime investigators. One of them captioned it simply, "Her voice at last." By 2020, both Daniel and Lorraine Whitaker had been legally declared deceased for nearly 4 decades. No bodies, no death certificates, only the ocean and what it returned. A memorial plaque sits on a stone bench near Fort Lauderdale Beach, placed by Lorraine's niece. They were never ghosts. The world simply chose not to see them. To this day, the cruise company denies all wrongdoing. Atlantic Pearl Lines was quietly absorbed by a European holding group in 2005. The Ocean Gala was sold for scrap in India. In 2009, no surviving crew members have ever testified on record. The recovered container, its contents, remain classified. The microfilm reel labeled AET protocol was never publicly acknowledged, but a final entry, recently unsealed in a congressional oversight file from 1982, may offer the only answer we'll ever get. It reads, 2 civilian couriers compromised. Package retrieved. Exposure contained. Status, mission complete. In the end, Daniel and Lorraine weren't just passengers. They weren't just another cold case. They were pawns in a game that had no rules, played on a board that floats between nations, beneath banners of secrecy and flags no one ever salutes in daylight. They didn't fall overboard. They were pulled under by silence, by protocol, by history, and the ocean, it just held them until it couldn't anymore.
Following the anonymous photo delivery in 2022, journalist Clara Renier, working for the Atlantic Dispatch, began compiling a retrospective on the case. She filed formal inquiries to the CIA, NSA, FBI, and the Department of Defense under FOIA. Most requests returned the same phrase, records unavailable under National Security Exemption 3B. But one reply from a retired legal advisor for the State Department revealed a single, overlooked clause. Under Operation IAT parameters, all civilian assets involved are considered conditional participants. In the event of operational breach or exposure, the United States maintains full authority to disavow, redirect, or silence said assets domestically or abroad. In short, if Daniel and Lorraine had become liabilities, it was legal to make them vanish. No trial, no notice, no trace. Renier's article was never published. Her editorial team received a quiet but firm call from a federal liaison. One line was remembered by a junior fact-checker. This story was buried with the ocean. Leave it there. That same year, a private marine research company scanning the seafloor for oil deposits near the Virgin Islands stumbled upon a second container. Similar dimensions, same metallic composition, unmarked, heavily corroded. When brought to the surface, it was completely empty. No documents, no electronics. Only one object remained, bolted to the inner wall with rusted brackets, a typewriter, key, the letter L, and beneath it, etched with a hand tool. She told the truth. The find was reported to local authorities and then seized by the U.S. Navy. All photos of the object were erased from the cloud, except one preserved by a technician who never shared his name. The image made its way through encrypted circles. Its file name, Lorraine, New First, Joel, JPG, in 2023. Exactly 42 years after Daniel and Lorraine boarded the MS Ocean Gala, a final anomaly emerged. The cruise ship's original passenger logbook, believed lost in a 1990 warehouse fire, was found in the private collection of a maritime archivist in Belgium. Every page was scanned, photographed, and digitized. But page 423, the exact cabin assigned to the Whitakers, was different. Handwritten in faded ink, added weeks after the cruise ended. They were not lost. They were removed. She asked the wrong question. He gave the right answer. Now they sleep. There was no signature, but on the bottom right corner of the page, barely visible beneath the ink, a watermark appeared under infrared, AET, Phase 3, resolved.